That's a Kleenex, that's water, and just an extra cushion for extra blankets.
Why don't you sit with Daddy over here? Ava, why don't you go over here and sit down?
Up here.
Or we can all move down one and Ava and I. Oh, okay. Then can you guys move down and I'll sit here next to you? Maybe. Or should I go one more and then have Ava come? No. Rommie will sit on. Or we can have Rommie. Should we go one more down? Rommie? No, not with this last one. We can go one more and then Rommie will sit down.
Vai, faz, Haim, sem isso. Sete vezes.
Okay, I got it. I don't trust it.
Thank you. So yeah, they're like blankets.
Okay, Paulvers, thank you very much. You can stand by your families now. Friends, we are going to begin the funeral service for Mrs. Tsilia Zoltak. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it in the silent mode or turn it completely off at this time. I'd also like to welcome on behalf of the family anybody who is attending live stream. Thank you. And services will be conducted by Rabbi Sholem Tenenbaum of the Chabad Jewish Center of Gurnee.
Thank you. So does everyone have a copy of the prayer? So we'll just take a moment as the copies are given out. And then we're going to say Psalm 15, which is on the front of the page. I'll actually do it in Hebrew now, and then we'll do it in English once everyone has a copy. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai miyomer ba'alecha miyishkon b'har kadshecha. Holech tamim u'foel tzedek v'dover emet bilvavo. Lo ragal al leshonai, lo asa l're'eu re'a, v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo. Livzeh be'inav nimas v'esireh Adonai yichabed. Nishba l'harav alei yamir, kasbo l'natam benashech v'shochad al naki lo lokach, oseh eileh lo yimot le'olam. And now we'll go to the English. It's Psalm 15 right in the middle of the page. On page 145. You ready to join in? Here we go. Okay. A song of David. Lord, who may sojourn in your tent, who may dwell on your holy mountain? One who walks in purity, does what is righteous, and speaks the truth from the heart, who has no slander on the tongue, nor has done harm to a fellow, nor cast disgrace towards a neighbor, in whose eyes a contemptible person is repulsive, but who honor those who are in the awe of the Lord, who swears truthfully even to personal hurt and never retracts, who does not lend money on interest or takes a bribe against the innocent. One who does these things shall never falter. Then we go to the famous Psalm 23, the Lord is our shepherd. I'll recite it in Hebrew, and then we'll do it together in English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i, lo echsar, benot asher yarbiteni, almei menuchot yana'aleni, nafshi yeshovev yancheni, v'maglei tzadek leman shemo. גם כי אלך בגיא צאן מוות לא ירא כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררי. תשענת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לא ארך ימים. And now in English, Psalm 23 on the bottom of the page. Please join in. A song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. So may only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days. Every one of the traditions that we have in regards to a funeral has meaning both for the people, the family that are mourning, and also for the one that has passed on. For instance, we just did the 7 stops because this is a transition between the physical and the spiritual, between one realm and another realm, between one reality and another reality. And whenever you have transitions, what's the worst thing that could happen in a transition? To be rushed. No one likes to be rushed. We need to have time to be able to appreciate, to be able to assimilate what's going on, to be able to internalize it. And that's both for the ones that are mourning, for the family, and for the one that has passed on, who's going on to their eternal rest, to a spiritual reality. Because we know from a Jewish perspective, and even from a rational, natural perspective, that life does not end. Life continues. It's just on a different level. And so, one of the customs that we have is a custom for a eulogy, to speak about the virtues of the person that has passed on. What's the purpose in that? Why specifically now? Because imagine if you went on a trip to accomplish an important mission. You were sent with the Peace Corps program to a city, a town in Africa to accomplish A, B, and C. And at the end of the year, your year is up, and now there's a goodbye party for you to go on, to be able to go back. And at that goodbye party, no one mentions anything about your accomplishments. Now, obviously, during that year, there were things that you got right and things that you missed. There's things that you accomplished and things that you failed. But if no one says anything, obviously, when you go back, you're going to doubt what happened. How did I do? How did I perform? What did I accomplish? Versus if by that party people speak about what you did, even if it wasn't perfect, but that gives you a certain sense of comfort and peace to be able to go back and to be able to view your time there in a proper light, and from a place of comfort and knowing that you did what you could do. So I'd like to call up Sofia to share a few words about Tsilia's life.
Can everyone hear me? Strong. Resilient. Survivor. Determined. Persevered. Feisty. Strong-willed. Sharp. Loving. Kind. Warm. Sweet. Generous. These are just some of the words used in the last 24 hours to describe my grandmother of blessed memory, Tsilia Zoltak, known as Babushka to me and my cousins, and Prababa to her beloved great-grandchildren. Tsilia was a woman who lived her life with purpose and passion, despite living through more than her fair share of hardship and heartache. She was only 10 years old when World War II began. Soon after, during the Holocaust, her family was ripped from the life they knew in their small village by the city of Soroki in Moldova and taken to a ghetto in the Oblast region of Vinnytsia, a part of modern-day Ukraine. Her parents were well-liked and respected tailors in their village and owned their own shop. She was the baby of the family, with 2 older brothers and an older sister, but she lost her brother Auren at the start of the war. About 30,000 people entered the ghetto where she lived in a pig basin for 4 years, and less than 100 were left by the end. Her family miraculously was part of that small group. In the rare times I was able to get her to talk about her experiences, one of the things that always struck me was how she always focused on the good things that happened during that terrible time. Over and over again, she would bring up how her family was helped so much by the Christians. She also talked about God and how he was watching over her. She kept this positive and inspiring outlook on life and humanity throughout her life. Thank you. Instead of being bitter or depressed after the horrors that stole her youth, she instead chose to devote her life to building a family and helping others. She studied medicine and became a registered nurse. Now, for those of us in the medical field, we know that there are nurses and there are nurses. All of them are great, but some of them are revered and feared. These nurses fall into 3 categories: emergency room nurses, intensive care or ICU nurses, and surgical nurses. Baba was both a surgical nurse in Russia and then an emergency nurse when she moved to Israel in her early 40s. She would light up whenever she talked about her nursing days and her patients and relationships with all the doctors and staff. She could go on for hours about her adventures on the hospital wards and never missed an opportunity to share a new story. I knew how much it meant to her when I also ended up choosing medicine as my career path. She was always my first and forever role model and mentor. She modeled for me what it means to be a strong woman, one who can thrive at work and at home. More than any other passion, however, the one for her family was the strongest. She was always there for her loved ones, whether it was taking care of her grandchild, cooking a delicious holiday meal, making the best mama liga ever, or helping, quote, take care of her family's pets. The latter may not have been one of her greatest strengths, however. I learned last night that she once watched my Aunt Ada's fish who died on her watch, and she tried to replace them without anyone noticing. In another incident, Aunt Ada left her with a dog, and she returned to what looked like a raccoon after Baba fed the dog stuffed cabbage all week. A cat that ended up looking like a raccoon, not a dog. In yet another animal incident with my parents' dog, she tried to clean up an accident on the rug with bleach that left a big mark, and she acted totally innocent when called out. Baba was quite the character and never liked to admit fault. Baba exuded love to each and every one of her grandchildren and their friends and boyfriends and spouses. Although she knew about 7 languages, English was probably her weakest. Yet it made no difference. If someone she loved introduced her to someone, she immediately loved them too. She would grasp their hands or arms, flash them a huge smile, kiss them on their cheeks 3 times, and pull them in for a big hug. Then she would start talking to them in a language they didn't understand. They would often turn to us with a look of confusion, wanting to understand what this sweet woman was saying. Ironically, we had no idea either, because she was often speaking in one of the languages like Yiddish that we too didn't understand. Inevitably, after each and every similar encounter, the friend would gush about how sweet Grandma is and how much they loved her after just one meeting. She felt the exact same way. As much as she loved her grandkids and their friends, nothing compared to the joy she had when she was around her great-grandchildren, or even just looked at their pictures plastered over her fridge. If I so much as talked about one of my children, I knew it would make her day. I will always cherish my last memory with Baba. My 12-year-old and I came to visit her recently, and while we were sitting and chatting with her, she kept standing up and going to the kitchen cabinets and fridge, trying to offer us something to eat, even though we weren't hungry, but she insisted. She found some candy that her great-granddaughter happily accepted. But that wasn't enough. She soon disappeared again, this time into her bedroom, and came back with a bottle of used perfume that she insisted her granddaughter take. She hadn't left her home or set foot in a store in ages, but she just couldn't bear the thought of not giving my child a gift or leaving her presents empty-handed. So she took what she could find and generously gave. That's who she was and always will be to me. She gave each of us so many gifts that will live on forever. May her soul live on forever in everlasting peace. Amen.
I'd like to ask Rommie, Tsilia's grandson, to come up and share a few words.
I promise that Sofia and I did not write these speeches together, but you're going to see a lot of commonality. As I reflected on the best way to describe my grandma, there were 3 words that stood out to me: resilience, passion, and humor. First, resilience. My grandmother was born Tsilia Schwartzman in 1930. As a young child, she was the victim of the atrocities of Nazi Germany, spending much of her childhood running, hiding in neighbors' attics, and later taken into concentration camps and subject to forced labor, unimaginable and inhumane conditions. At the age of 14, 15, the Nazis were defeated. She'd literally seen hell and lived hell, but she lived, and she had the opportunity to start her life over again. Later, at the age of 43, she again started her life over by immigrating to Israel, learning new languages, starting a new job, and acclimating to a brand new country and a new set of standards. And once again, at the age of 56, she again reinvented her life by immigrating again, now to the US, to be with her daughters and her grandkids. At the age of 91, my grandmother outlived almost everybody in her generation and was the last living person in her family, having lost both her parents, her two brothers, her sister, and her husband, our grandpa. But with all this loss and having to reinvent her life so many times, she maintained an incredible attitude, continued to love the simplicity of life, and kept strong every single day. She was the definition of resilience. Second, passion. My grandma was passionate about her career. You heard from Sofia. She was a nurse in Russia and then later Israel, and she loved caring for and helping people. She would tell stories to me of her 2 to 3 hour daily bus commute in Israel to get to the hospital every morning, and how much she loved getting up early, and how she was excited to talk to people on the bus and then get to work and help people. Until recently, she even took out her stethoscope. She'd listen to your heart and tell you all about the respect she had for her colleagues in the hospital in Israel. She had a passion for food and cooking. Grandma was an excellent chef, making the best traditional dishes and experimenting with ones that she saw celebrity chefs and chefs on TV make. When I was a child, well before Food Network and Iron Chef, Grandma and I would watch WTTW cooking shows. We'd write down the recipes, we'd walk to the corner market, buy all the ingredients, we'd come home and we'd experiment in the kitchen making pastas, stews, and cookies. In fact, my passion for cooking originated from being in the kitchen with my grandma, starting when I was just a couple years old. And most importantly, she had a passion for her family. My grandma lived for her 2 daughters, her 4 grandkids, and her 8 great-grandkids. We were her everything, and each moment she spent with us made her feel fulfilled. And even people she didn't know well became part of her extended family. She'd meet someone for the first time, give them a kiss on both cheeks, and you instantly became part of her family. The third word that describes my grandma is humor. She was not a funny person. She didn't tell jokes. She didn't read comics. She was not funny because of what she said. She was funny because of what she did, and it almost always came at the expense of my grandpa. For example, when I was a child, there was a weekend where my parents went to Las Vegas for a wedding. Came home from school to find that our dog Eddie had eaten a quarter of a large wooden coffee table in our family room. I asked Grandma and Grandpa what happened, and without hesitation, she looked at my grandpa and started yelling at him and telling him that it's his fault, despite the fact that he was outside the entire day staining the deck and she was inside all day with the dog. And maybe my favorite story happened when I was a child at Great America with my mom and my grandma. We were waiting in line to go ride the go-karts, and the man in front of us realized that he couldn't take a very large gorilla that he had won with him on the go-kart. So he turned to me and he handed me this very large gorilla. When we got to the front of the line, I handed the gorilla to my grandma and asked her to watch it for me while my mom and I rode on the go-kart. The next thing we knew, we were driving along the path and a woman passes us with a giant gorilla in the passenger seat next to her. It was my grandma. She wasn't going to sit back and miss all the fun. Those are some of my favorite memories of Grandma, and while her resilience, passion, and humor made her truly special, one of the most incredible things for me was that she connected with everyone around her, which is remarkable given that they never shared a language with her. My brother-in-law Sandy summed it up beautifully yesterday when he said, "Grandma said so much without saying a word." While many of us are heartbroken today, I know Grandma's resilience, her passion, and her humor live on in each one of us. We're so lucky to have had her in our lives for so long, and may her memory truly be a blessing for us all.
Hashem Natan v'Hashem Lakach. Yehi Shem Hashem Mevorach. God has given and God has taken. May God's name be blessed. So we're here today to mourn and also to celebrate the life of Tsilia Bat Leah Rachel, the daughter of Leah Rachel and Yisrael. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to get to know Tsilia personally. Oftentimes, we get to know about special individuals only after their passing. So last night, while sitting with the family, Ada, Dora, Sofia, Lina, and Rommie, hearing Tsilia's story about her life, the animated looks, the excitement, the expressions, the smiles inspired me and made me feel connected and to realize that Tsilia is someone special. Tsilia's life defines the epitome of a Yiddish mama. Like the chorus of the famous Yiddish song goes, sorry, I'm not going to sing it, but I'll say it in Yiddish and translate. A Yiddish mama, es gibt nicht besser auf der Welt. A Yiddish mama, oi weh, wie bitter, wenn sie fällt. Wie schön und lichtig ist ein Haus, wenn die Mama ist da, wie traurig finster wird, wenn Gott nimmt ihr auf Elam Haba. Im Wasser und Feuer wollt sie gelaufen für ihr Kind, nicht halten ihr Teier, dass es gewiss die größte sind. Oi, wie glücklich und reich ist der Mensch, was hat als eine schöne Matone geschenkt von Gott, nur ein altische jüdische Mama, oi Mama, mein. And some things can't be translated. You know, it's called lost in translation. There's no way to really translate this properly from Yiddish to English, but I'm going to do my best so you get a gist of what's going on. By Yiddish Mama, this is the chorus of the song. It's not the entire song. A Yiddish Mama, there's nothing better on this earth. A Yiddish Mama. How bitter when she's no longer here. How nice and bright it is at home when Mama is here. How sad and dark it becomes when God takes her. Through water and fire she would have run for her child. Not to hold her dear is surely the greatest mistake. How lucky and rich is the one who has such a beautiful gift from God. Like a precious Yiddish Mama. My Yiddish Mama. So Tsilia, as you know, survived the Holocaust and had to reinvent herself. She studied and became a nurse back in Moldova. Then Tsilia moved to Israel when she was 43 years old, and then again to the United States at age 56. Each time overcoming the challenges of a new country, a new culture, a new language, yet always being productive, contributing her part as a nurse, and her family always being the top priority. Even though she had to overcome insurmountable challenges, she was a happy person, always smiling. She was not bitter or negative, no resentment because of her tough life experiences. On the contrary, she found beauty and joy in the small things in life. Walking down the street, she would stop and point out a flower or a bird. But more importantly, she shared that joy with others. The people Tsilia met and interacted with, she would embrace, connect, and bring that special joy and appreciation for life, even though they couldn't necessarily understand what she was saying. But her expression and her smile exuded that joy and made it contagious. The Torah tells us what was great about Abraham. Why did God choose him as the patriarch of the Jewish nation? So you'd give many answers to that. But it just says one thing, because he passed on his heritage to his children. That's the only thing. That's why God chose him. Not because of all the great things he did, but because he didn't keep it for himself. He passed it on to the next generation. Tsilia saw the positive in life and she passed it on. The great Maggid of Mezrich, as a child, there was a terrible fire in his home and it burnt down. Later, he saw his mother crying. He asked his mother, "Why are you crying? For our belongings that we lost in the fire? Thank God we survived." She responded, "I'm not crying for the furniture or the material things we lost. I'm crying because in the house I had a book that had our family tree, our ancestry listed all the way back to King David. And now it's destroyed." So the child, who as an adult was going to become one of the greatest Jewish leaders, tells his mother, "Mom, don't cry. I'm going to be the beginning of a brand new family tree and legacy." So Tsilia had to start anew and create a new life. Despite all the difficulties and challenges that she would have to overcome, she had a goal and she achieved it. Raising a beautiful family of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren that are here with us today. Tsilia was special. We need more such people. It may be a good idea to write down your memories and put it together as a book. But even more importantly is to continue her legacy in a concrete way. Writing a book is also concrete. Today it's common for people to say, "I'll have you in my heart. I'll remember you in my heart." From a Jewish and even practical perspective, even though that's beautiful, however, we live in a physical world where action is paramount and overweighs intentions 1,000 to 1. So it's up to you and it's up to us, to all of us here today, to continue Tsilia's life and make it real, to ensure her legacy lives on, impacting the world for the good and in a concrete way. She could continue to live on only in our hearts and minds, or she could continue to live on in our actions as well, and that's where it counts most. So it's up to you. It's up to us. King Solomon says, better to go to a funeral than a party. What's the advantage of that? From a party, you come back maybe with a hangover. But from a funeral, you come back with clarity, focus, and an awareness that life has a purpose and an objective, and we have a mission. And God allocates a certain amount of time to each individual to accomplish that mission. Where did Tsilia find the inner strength to persevere and to shine, regardless of the challenges in her life? I think it's fair to say that her family, her connection to her roots, her Judaism, gave her that strength to view life without resentment, in a positive light and in a joyful way, and to find meaning and happiness in the small things of life, and to share that with others. So let's take it upon ourselves to add one small mitzvah or good deed to bring Tsilia's legacy to life. Consider lighting Shabbat candles this Friday evening. If you need candles and matches, I have right over here. I have more than one. Consider bringing a charity box into your home and giving even a penny on a daily basis. Or maybe enhance your kosher experience. Visit or call a friend in need. Smile to someone you wouldn't have and brighten up someone else's day. This moment is the moment of passing the torch. By the Olympics, they passed the torch. It's 84 generations, if I'm not mistaken, from when Moses got the Torah at Mount Sinai with the entire Jewish people. Every generation passed the torch to the subsequent generation. And this is the moment of Tsilia passing the torch to her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. So, Ada, Dora, Sofia, Lina, Rommie, Jack, spouses as well, the great-grandchildren, Ava, Sasha, Talia, Asher, Cooper, Mila, Auren, and Levi. The flame of Tsilia's life and legacy is in your hands. So let's make it real. May Tsilia's soul be bound in the bond of eternal life. And let us say, Amen. So we'll continue with Kel Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer, asking God that notwithstanding that we're not perfect, God in His compassion should view only the virtue and the positive in life and judge favorably and grant repose in eternal life. So it's on the back of the page. I'll say it in Hebrew and then we'll say it together in English. So we're on page 150 on the top. El malei rachamim shoichein b'meroinim hamtzei menucha nechoina al kamfei ashkena demalis kedeshim u'toirim kezeir arakia mazhirim es nishmas Tsilia Bas Yisrael Shalech Le'ilama Barvur Shanachnu Mispalim Ba'ad Haskaras Nishmasa Began Eden Tehei Menuchasa Lochein Bal Harachamim Yaskireha B'Seiser Knafav Le'ilamim Yitzrer Haim Es Nishmasa Adonai Hu Nachalasa V'Sanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Naimar Amen. We'll say it together in the English. Please join in. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant proper repose on the sheltering wings of your presence and the lofty levels of the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament onto the soul of Tsilia, daughter of Leah Rachel and Yisrael, who has gone to her world and for whose memory we pray. May her repose be in paradise. May the Master of Compassion bring her under the cover of God's wings and bind her soul in the bond of life. May the Lord be her heritage, and may she repose on her resting place in peace. And let us respond, Amen. I forgot to mention the charity box, but he was not happy that I didn't mention it. If anyone needs a charity box in their home, so they have over here also. So we continue with Psalm 150. Prior to the interment, it's the middle of the page on page 150. I'll say it together in English. Sorry, it's on page 151, the English. A song to ascents. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot falter, your guardian will not slumber. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord is your guardian, the Lord is your protection by your right side. By the day, the sun will not harm you, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all evil. The Lord will guard your life. The Lord will guard your going and coming from now and forever. So we continue now with the interment. Also, the Kriya, the renting of the garments, which symbolizes that something near and dear has been torn from us. So only the immediate family, Ada and Dora, will do the Kriya. Got it, yeah. Okay, so I'll explain as the. So while the casket is being lowered, I'll explain some of the things, some of the customs, some of the steps that we take. So one of the things that we do besides for Kriya, the renting of the garments, is that we try to do the whole process of interment, we try to do it personally. We don't just give it off. There's a Jewish burial society. We don't just send a body to the morgue to be handled by who knows who. Everything is done personally, even though we're in a way hesitant and uncomfortable with it. But this is what's called the greatest mitzvah. It's called a mitzvah that has no possibility to get anything in return. It's called chesed shel emet, true kindness. Why? Because normally if you do an act of kindness, there's some expectation in some way of something in return, even if I have the return of the gratitude is already a return. But when we do something for someone that's already passed on, there's no possibility and there's no intention to receive anything, and therefore it's called chesed shel emet. The highest level of kindness is nothing in return. So we try to the best of our ability to personally be involved, and therefore we invite, I shouldn't say we invite, everyone has a chance to use the shovel to put in a little bit of the earth to be part of the mitzvah. And the way we do it is we turn the shovel upside down and we don't pass it from one another. And the reason is because we're not excited about doing it. It's a responsibility, it's a mitzvah, but it's something that we're hesitant to do. And at the same time, when we're doing that, we also quietly to ourselves, we ask for forgiveness. Because if in any way earlier or at this moment we haven't given the greatest respect or dignity, and there may be some hurt feelings or maybe an affront in some way, so we ask for forgiveness. That we know that the one that has passed on definitely forgives us, but we verbalize it, and we also say that if there's anything that may have been the other way around, that we forgive. And that also grants closure. When a person knows that everything is clear, there's no elephant in the room, so that allows for the transition to go on in a peaceful and in an unrestricted manner or uninhibited manner. So following the interment and putting the earth in, we'll have Kaddish. Rommie is going to recite Kaddish on behalf of the family. Do we have him? Okay. So before they put the cover on, so one of the family members that would want to come up. This is earth from the land of Israel, which is customary to put in. So you don't have to do it if you like to do it. It's up to you. Okay, so while we're waiting, I'll just explain the significance of Kaddish. What's this prayer? Kaddish, what are we trying to say? What are we trying to accomplish? So the Kaddish starts off with the words Yitgadal v'Yitgadash Shemei Rabbah, which is that may God's name be exalted and glorified. What does this have to do with a funeral? So we know that it says in Genesis that man is created in God's image. And so, from a Jewish perspective, every time when it happens, God forbid, that a person passes away, what's happening? There's an aspect of godliness, of the divine, that's departing from the world. If you think about it, we say no two snowflakes are the same. No two individuals are the same. Where does that come from? The different personalities, the different character traits. Where does it come from that there's such a vast amount of variables, of differences between people, and you don't find two people that are the same? That comes from God's infinity. There's infinite amount of characters, of traits, and therefore when a person passes away, there's an aspect of God that's departing. And therefore we recite the Kaddish, that Yitgadal v'Yitgadash Shmei Rabbah, that may God's name be exalted and glorified, that the loss of that godliness, of that divine aspect of the purpose of the persons fulfilling their mission and purpose in life, that should be filled. That void should be filled. That God should fill the void. So that's a little bit about the Kaddish. Okay, following, they finish with the vault cover. They're going to uncover the earth, and then everyone could come up if they'd like and put a few shovelfuls in. And again, we do it with the shovel upside down to begin with, at least the first few, and we don't pass it from one to another. So we put the shovel down, and then the next person takes it if they'd like. Okay, so maybe we should start first with the family. If you'd like to come up, and then everyone can have an opportunity if they'd like.
Go on either side. That's okay, we're here. Friends, if you'd like to come up on either side. Try to find on that side. This is a little tight over here.
Yeah.
I didn't see you there.
Yep.
No, I got it.
Yeah, because
We could have everyone gather under the tent again. We're going to complete the service. Want to come over this way, please?
So Rommie will recite Kaddish. When he recites Kaddish, we'll make sure to answer Amen after each paragraph or each stanza.
Yep. Okay. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Belma dihu atid leat hadata. Uliahaya maitaya. Uliasaka la hayai alma. Uli mivnai. Karta di Yarushalaim. Uleshik lali. Haikilai. Hecholai. Bigava. Ule makar, pulhana, nukra ra, mayara, ule atava, pulhana, dishamaya, leatra, viyam lik, kudsha baruch, hube mal kute vikurai, behayai kon, uvi yomai kon, uve hayai, dekol bait, Yisrael, Bagala uviman kariv. Vimuru amen.
Say it together, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam Ule'omei Omaya Yisbarech.
Yitbarak v'yish tabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekusha biruchu. Leala min kol, birkata vishirata, tushbihata vinehamata, damiran belma, vimru amen. Yeheshalama rabba min shemaya, vehayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael, vimru amen. Ose shalom. Huyase shalom aleinu ve'akol Yisrael v'imru amen.
So now, at this point, the service has concluded. We do what's called traditionally a shura, where we make 2 lines of people, and the mourners walk through, and we recite the traditional consolation, which I'll say out loud in Hebrew and in English so everyone can follow along. Following that, it's also traditional not to go into the home before washing the hands, so that we separate between the living and those that have passed on. So we're going to continue now with the shura.
The family will be sitting Shiva at Avraham Haim's residence, 580 Blue Ash Drive in Buffalo Grove. Today, immediately following the interment until 7 p.m. and tomorrow, Thursday, from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. The address is on the folders that we gave you. If by chance you misplace your folder, it's also on the website. Thank you. If we could have the 2 lines form now. We're going to form over here. Yeah. Okay, so we can line up facing each other so that the family can walk through this way. Let's take it all the way to the screen.
המקום ינחם אתכם בתוך שער הבית ציון בירושלים. May the Almighty Show you among